So and when did you write this film?
I wrote this film when I was 17. It was right after I lost a really close friend to suicide, and it was horrible. You know, it was the first time. It was a really devastating time. You know, the first real loss me and most of my friends had ever known. And I wrote this film, and then I just thought, you know, I was 17. I was a little too young to tell it. I didn't know what to do with it. That I hadn't done anything professional yet, so I put it away in a drawer. COVID hit. The world fell apart. My biological father took his own life.
Yes.
My stepfather Shane died. It was a horrible time. And then I made a short film just as we were coming out of COVID, which a head executive at Lionsgate saw, and I got a call out of the blue saying, "We love your short film. Would you be interested in writing and directing a feature?" Which of course I just turned 20. I was freaked out and the most exciting news I'd ever heard. And that very day I found that script that I'd written when I was 17, and it was still, you know, it was a treatment. I didn't think I put it into final draft yet, but it worked, and I was read it again, and I thought, you know, I've gone through a lot more since I came up with this, you know, my both files, etc. But I thought, this is there. So really the bones of that are the same as the original story.
Given your proximity to death by suicide, what can you tell me about what you've learned, or what could you share with people who maybe are going through you know, experiencing that?
I think there's no rule book for grief is a really important thing. And I have to say, I never read comments, I never read message requests, I never read anything on social media, but I read every single one of the messages I was sent around that time from people being so kind, people who've been through exactly the same thing, people who've been in variants of the same thing. And every single one of them stuck with me, and I've replied to as many as I can because they're just so kind, and there's so much horror in the world. You really realize it when something like that happens, because it's one thing anyone who's been touched by grief, by suicide, by loss, but in any capacity feels it and speaks. And I think also, you know, that there are such different kinds of grief. You know, when my biological father took his own life, it was a confusing, horrific, devastating, horrible time. Whereas when Shane, my stepfather, died naturally of a heart attack, it was just a horrific type. It was just a different type of grief. It was just devastatingly sad and appalling.
How do you as a mom navigate that? I mean, I would assume that was probably maybe one of your hardest moments in your life, dealing with the, you know,
it was a bad
his dad taking his own life.
You were the first person who told me, thank God, because I read it online about a minute later.
No.
So you came in just in time.
He was on a plane, he was just taking off.
Oh,
no, it's really hard because, you know, as a mummy, obviously you care more about how your child will take it than how you do. So you do have to put your own feelings on a back burner a little bit. But on the other hand, in both those cases, of course, both men were, of course, I was the one in a relationship with them, not Damian.
Right.
So it's just hard because I guess you have to still keep everyone together because you're mummy.
Did you both carry any guilt relating to that?
But Damien wouldn't have any guilt at all,
Right.
and shouldn't have.
Right.
Yes, of course. Well, it's just so awful, isn't it? When you lose someone, whether it's, you know, by this means or a natural death, because we had both to deal with, you do realise how you could have been more there for people.
Right.
How can you not? And I think each time something bad happens, and obviously as we get older, sadly, of course, we do lose more people. I think it does remind you how much more time we need to give to the people that we care for.
Yes.
And I try. Yeah. It's made a difference to me every time I've lost someone, that you just value more who you've got. Time. And I think, funnily enough, COVID really made a difference to us for that, being in lockdown and suddenly having different people, because we had all my family to come and live with us for 3 months, who I hadn't lived with since the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was the most extraordinary thing. And I loved them. Of course I loved them. I saw them at Christmas, Easter, but I didn't really live and breathe with them.
Yeah.
And doing that again, it completely, because I remembered how fabulous it was to be back in that family cocoon. You bickered, you argued, you shouted at each other to do the dishes and all that stuff. Right. But it was, I loved it. And now I see them all the time.
That's great.
They're so valuable to me again now. My brothers, my sisters, all that stuff. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.